Hello everybody, and we're back here with another comic book review here on the Fortress of Solitude, and today we're going to be checking out the Immortal Thor issue 1 by Al Ewing and Martin Coccolo. So what has Ewing in store for Thor? Well, firstly I think we should address what happened with the last Thor run, since everyone seems to kind of think it petered out, and I definitely thought so at the time, since it just kind of derailed a little bit. A new writer came in, and it just kind of disappeared there for a little bit. So for those who are unaware, the previous Thor writer, Donny Cates, who was doing a fantastic job on the book, ended up getting in quite a terrible car accident which left him unable to finish his Thor run and his Hulk run, which is why both ended very quickly and why Torrin Gronsbeck took over his Thor run for the last few issues. Because of that, everything he was building up to with Thanos, Black Winter, all this sort of stuff he had building up kind of got put on hold, and not really sure what's going to happen with it. So now we're starting Thor anew. We've got a new writer, new artist, new creative team. So what is Ewing going to be doing? Well, Ewing respects a lot of what Cates set up in that book, not fully resetting everything and instead building off of what Cates and Gronsbeck had developed, and even finishing up some of the plot lines like the Rainbow Bridge, which to my knowledge has been broken since the War of the Realms, which was a long time ago, and it's now, thanks to Loki, fully fixed again. Thor himself is also returned to a more classical take on the character. He's back in his old costume, the classic Thor costume with the big red cape and the white chevrons and the yellow boots. And even the way he speaks feels like the old Thor again before Jason Aaron came around and kind of redid the character a little bit and made him a bit more mature and a bit more modern. Thor's time as a king has humbled him, and I enjoy seeing him find ways to prevent war and death now, and trying to end threats before they can even get worse. The focus on his powers over storms this issue was really quite cool, and one I've never actually really thought about. Like, I obviously he can control storms and everything, but I like the idea that not only is he like a king of Asgard, but he's also the king of the storms, and he oversees them, and they're sort of like his people. And I like when we are approached this issue, we see him as sort of like this stern father talking to an unruly child that he has to like tell to go to bed, and that's really quite cool, and I wish more writers would do that with Thor and his powers, since it's a really unique way of looking at it. Ewing also explores how Thor is the son of two worlds, both Asgard and Earth, and so he feels like he must spend time between both worlds. So we get to see a bit of time on Asgard and in the realms of fantasy, and then he goes to Earth, and just the stuff he does on Earth is really quite cool. He spends a lot of time in New York just playing chess in the park with some old people and taking selfies, and there's even mention of him actually helping against Orchis. Very briefly, he helps some mutants against Orchis, which is quite interesting and makes me wonder, why isn't he getting involved with their whole thing a little bit more? I guess maybe Orchis would have contingencies in place. I know they are definitely hunting other heroes like Captain America and Tony Stark, so I imagine they would have something in place for Thor. But no, it's just fun seeing Thor helping out the people of Midgard and kind of just like being there and being part of their lives. Martin Coccolo reteams with Ewing after their work on the different X-Men books and makes Thor's return really easy on the eyes. His artwork is just fantastic, and I'm a big fan of the classic Thor costume. I think it looks fantastic, and it's really got that whole Jack Kirby look to it, and I'm glad that Martin makes it look fantastic with modern coloring and pencil work and everything. It just looks great. I also like the simplicity of the design of the villain, the Utgard Thor, who's just a giant dark cloud, and I like that his weapon choices are quite unique as well. He's got the Thunderbolt as well as a wheel, since he's always cracking on about the Wheel of Time and progress, and I especially like the wheel because it makes me feel like it's definitely a Bloodborne reference, since a wheel looks exactly like that in the game that you can use as a weapon. With this being a new number 1, we of course get a new villain, and as I mentioned just before, the big bad of the villain is Tornos, the Utgard Thor. Now, Utgard is the capital of Jotunheim, which is interesting, and more than that, this along with the Utgard Loki, who we meet near the end of the issue, are related to Gaia, Thor's mother. To my knowledge, we haven't seen these characters before. I do know the wizard that Thor fights at the beginning of the issue, the Frost Giant wizard, did use the Utgard Loki's name at one point, and that's like their sort of tie to everything in this issue, and I'm looking forward to finding out a bit more about these characters. They're cool, they're very foreboding, and I like how it was all built up through narration about how they're the gods of gods, and and they live in the shadows, and they're the things that like block out light and everything. It's really quite foreboding, and the Thor books have always been good at that sort of dialogue where they sort of hype up villains or hype up a new hero or something. The Utgard Thor's motive is actually quite an interesting one, since he mentions that he is sick of this world and it's Thor not changing or not growing with the times, more or less. And I like that that's his motive, seemingly, to get Thor to change and grow as a person, and in turn have the world change and grow as well. It's something that's definitely not really considered a villainous plot, to change and grow as a person, you know, learn from your experiences and do better the next time. It's quite an interesting thing for a villain to come at Thor with, and I'm looking forward to it, especially because there is that sort of meta motive to it, where Thor is a character who has undergone some changes all throughout his life and run in comic books, but none of it has really stuck all that much, and then it always reverts back to the usual, kind of like how this book is reverting Thor back to, you know, the more classical look, and everything sort of comes back to being normal, or being what was the standard at the time of the character's creation. As a big circle, comics do it all the time, all the goddamn time, and here it's no different. And I like that the villain is seemingly trying to get Thor to change and to move past and evolve what he is. It also makes me question whether this is going to be revealed to be part of Jonathan Hickman's Gods series, since Hickman does actually make a surprise appearance in this issue with a one-page teaser right at the end of the book of the Gods series, where we see Tyr getting stuffed in a box, which I guess is also some meta commentary about characters being put in boxes by fans and stuff like that, all that sort of stuff. So I'm intrigued to see how he's going to tie that into this story, or vice versa, how Ewing is going to inform on the Gods story, since it was made pretty clear throughout this entire issue that these characters, these new villains that we're meeting, are apparently the gods of gods, and Hickman's book is dealing with that sort of stuff, so I have to imagine there will be some tie into that. The Immortal Thor issue 1 was a cool new beginning to the adventures of Thor that both continues a lot of the work recent writers have been doing and sort of rounding off some of the plot lines they had going, as well as offering up something a little bit more classic and a return to the old Thor we know and love. I am going to give this issue a 9 out of 10, so definitely check it out, especially if you want to jump back onto Thor. It's a fresh new #1, fresh new creative team. You couldn't ask for a better time to jump back on.